thank you. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to talk about the data that we have been collecting. I'm from São Paulo, Brazil, and in Brazil, the population is becoming older very fast. We have centenarians distributed in all the country, especially in the north and northeast of the country, but you can see that you can find centenarians in other regions too. One study that have been following elderly living in São Paulo city show us that they are becoming more and more compromised to make basic activities and instrumental activities, and they become worse. Every 10 years, they show us that there was no improvement in the ability to make these activities. So we are worried, but in this kind of study, you have a mix with healthy people, elderly, that are independent and can do a lot of stuff, and others that are frail and have a lot of disease. Some of them live in the community because this is an epidemiological study. So the representation of the population mix these different kinds of ways to age. And at 2010, we were worried about how the ones that are independent, how they could age, and how we can understand a little bit better how they are after 80 years old. So in 2010, there were no too many studies about long-lived elderly people living in the community. And we wanted to know how these long-lived individuals age in older age. So we invited elderly that were 80 years and older, that were living in the community, were independent for ADLs, could walk without assistance, were able to answer the questionnaires, were able to perform the physical tests, have chronic disease, but they were under control, not having acute illnesses, not having cancer except basal cell carcinoma of the skin, not to show dementia, no history of stroke or myocardial infarction in the past 6 months, not undergoing dialysis, chemotherapy, or radiotherapy. So we evaluated 404 elderly, and 305 were included because they could have these characteristics. But 32 were excluded after, because some of them having dementia in the first years, or because we lost contact. And in the end, we had 273 elderlies, and we made annual comprehensive geriatric assessment and laboratory tests from 2010 to 2020. Who were they? 70% were women. The mean age was 85, and the median of schooling was 4 years of formal schooling. Mini-mental state examination was 25 from 14 to 30 with no dementia diagnosis. The GDS, the Geriatric Depression Scale, the median was 3 from 0 to 12. And in terms of marital status, most lost his significant other, and 20% were living alone. From religion, most of them were Catholic, and in terms of profession, most of them production of goods and services, and some takes care of the family and then the house. So we see that they have low education level, and some of them without any support, if you consider the spouse or marital status. In terms of skin, we use the Fitzpatrick classification, and most of them were brown skin, light brown skin, and darker white skin. We see that we don't have too many dark brown and not too many pale white skin or fair skin. In terms of from where did they come from, most of them were from Brazil, 85%, but many had parents and grandparents, originally from Europe and Japan. We see that in terms of grandmother, Italy and Portugal were the most important countries that send people to Brazil. So based on the publication made by peers that classified centenarians in survivors, delayers, and escapers based on the morbidity. Survivors were those that had disease before 8 years. Delayers, those that have disease between 8 and 100 years. And escapers, those that had disease only after 100 years. We applied this classification to the longevos, and we found that if you see the disease that kill the most, that are cardiovascular disease, stroke, and cancer, we see that survivors have less of these problems compared with escapers and delayers. But if we consider the most frequent disease, like cancer, hypertension, Parkinson, COPD, diabetes, thyroid disease, osteoporosis, we see that the survivors, 84% of them have these chronic diseases. 15% in the delayers, and 10% in the escapers. So only 10% could escape from this disease. So we decide to see which factors that compromise independence and increase the risk of death of this population. And we considered variables like age, sex, skin color, country of origin, marital status, living alone, religion, occupation, schooler, mini mental state examination, GDS, morbidities classified according to the age at which the disease diagnosis was made. And we found that the dementia and physical and sensory dependency were the outcomes more frequent in this population. And we found that 13.6% of the elderly that had no outcome until they die. And you see that cancer and cardiovascular disease were not so common as an outcome. On the other hand, they were the important cause of death in this population, as infection too. So we see that cardiovascular disease in this population is still one important cause of death, and infection also, and cancer also. So when we see classified the individuals as the layers and escapers versus survivors, we can see that we have 3.2 times higher mortality risk distribution than long-lived individuals classified as survivors. So it means that survivors maybe has more resilience. They have more chronic disease, maybe they have more outcomes, but they survive a little bit better than the layers and escaper. We have to pay attention about this population, and maybe it's important to consider that if one the layer or escaper has a disease, we must consider that he has a higher risk of mortality. One increase in 1 unit in GDS leads to a 19% increase in the subdistribution of the risk of death from infection. So maybe depression is related with a higher risk of infection. And we observed an inverse association between depressive symptoms and 25-OH vitamin D levels in this population also. So maybe we need to follow them and make them more stable in terms of factors that increase the possibility to have depression, because it increases the risk of death. The immune profile and body composition in this population was low, the rate of IRP, And high sensitive CRP was found to be associated with body composition. So the body composition in this population must we must pay attention, because it's related with more risk of inflammation, and maybe we need to control the composition. We need to control the adiposity tissue that they have. A 1-year increase in age led to a 22% increase in the subdistribution of the risk of dying from cardiovascular disease. So age was important and increased the risk. The layers in terms of 10 most frequent diseases, and escapers in terms of 10 most frequent diseases, have a subdistribution of risk of death from cardiovascular disease 2.2 times higher than long-lived individuals classified as survivors. So we saw that the survivors are more resilient compared to the layers and escapers, and we see that the cardiovascular disease is one of the cause of death of the layers and escapers. So if they have symptoms of cardiovascular disease, or they must be evaluated frequently to see if they have a good condition, a good possibility to develop or not a complication, a cardiac complication. In elderly individuals, body fat percentage was directly associated with arterial stiffness in this population, and inversely associated with the amount of lean mass. These findings may be linked to an increased cardiovascular risk. So we have the rigidity, the arterial stiffness that is going to contribute to increase the cardiovascular risk in this population. And again, the body fat percentage seems to be related with that. And it's something that we have to review, because until now, there is a kind of not not intervention in terms of body mass index when they are not well. So we have to look for ways to make the people with more lean mass and less adipose tissue. And the relation between nitric oxide, gait speed, and frailty markers in functionality independent oldest old, we saw that NO levels were higher in robust individuals. That makes sense. So we saw that the rigidity in the vessels are more frequent in obese patients. And when you have nitric oxide higher, you have more possibility to relax the arterial, and it means that they are more in more conditions to survive and don't have the cardiovascular event. A significant correlation was detected between body mass index and nitric oxide. For each 1 kilogram increase in BMI, there was an increase of 8.03 in NO level. Increased levels may represent a marker of better health outcomes and longevity. An increase of 1 unit in mini mental examination led to a 12% reduction in the subdistribution of the risk of death from other causes and unknown causes. So again, the cognition is also very important and repercutes and have impact in the risk of death. But I think that we saw, and it's very important to say that 13.6% of the long-lived individuals died without experiencing any of the study events, without having to go through a period of dependency. That's very important. So they could not have this kind of situation that can compromise the quality of life, and they could be independent until the end of life. So we did not observe any difference between the sexes. Both cancer incidence and mortality from this cause were not associated even with age and sex. The events that had a higher incidence with increasing age were death as the first cause and death from cardiovascular disease. The delayers 10 and escapers 10 had a higher risk of death from cardiovascular disease, other causes, and unknown causes. Mortality from infection was higher with a great number of depressive symptoms and as frequent as dementia in patients with diabetes mellitus, and 13.6% of the long-lived individuals died without experiencing any of the studied events, without having to go through a period of dependency. I'd like to thank you all the people that have been working with this data and more data that we could not, I could not show today. And I also thank you for your attention. And my email is in the bottom of the slide. And if you want to contact me for any doubt, I will be fine to help you. Thank you.